right. I think I'm live. If anyone's out there and they can see me, please put a message in the chat so I know this is working. Good evening. Good evening from the west coast of the US. I know there may be people watching this from all over the world. The Phoenix Rising book originated in Australia, and we have many people, many of my co-authors are, thanks Christy, many of my co-authors are all over the world, including Australia, and there's a few more in the United States. Many other countries. Now, if you haven't read this book yet, I highly recommend it. The stories in... Hi, Bronwyn! The stories in this book are just one after another inspiring stories by some amazing women who have been through some incredibly challenging things. And if you've been watching the summit, you've already seen some of the incredible skills and lessons and inspirations that these women are now bringing to the world. So very lucky, incredible gratitude to be part of this group. And I want to dedicate my talk tonight to Christy Moran, without whom I would not be here at this moment. Big kisses to you. And thanks to Taryn Reeves, who was the woman who made this all happen, got us all of us authors together in this book. And if you have read my chapter, you probably already have some idea of some of the skills I developed on my journey. If you have not read my chapter, it's okay. You have plenty of time. And I just want to say a little bit about myself. I am a yoga therapist, a wellness coach, a grief educator, and if you want, you can read more and more about me, more than you'll ever want to know about me, in the book in my bio, or I can put my link to my website in the chat here. All the information you'd ever want. And what I want to focus on today about my journey is how I arrived at this summit, how Taryn and I got together to have her encourage me to write this chapter in this book. It comes from recent experiences in my life, starting with the death of my husband in 2016. It was my second marriage, and we had not been married long, less than 2 years, and it was a very tumultuous time. He was struggling, and he died by suicide in April of 2016. And when he did this, I, needless to say, was devastated. It really turned my life upside down. And I thought I would never again be functional. I thought I would never again be happy. I suffered trauma and then post-traumatic stress disorder. And it took me a very long time to come through to the point where I could start to learn how to recover from this loss and recover myself, become a functioning human again. I started out by going the wrong direction, trying to ease my suffering through the use of chemicals, substances, and substance misuse almost ended me. I ended up being really, really sick. With therapy and my yoga practice and meditation finally coming back on board, I was able to develop the skills that I'm going to share some of with you today. All of us go through stress. Now, I can talk a lot about grief, loss, trauma, recovery, but all of us, I think the globe, everyone has gone through a collective form of grief in the last year and a half, with grieving the lives that we had before COVID. And that grief can be recovered from. And that's part of what my message is to you today. Also, it's a stress, it's a stressor. And when we're under stress, our bodies and our minds react in ways that make it difficult to make a decision. So this is the piece I'm going to focus on today, is how can we make good decisions even when our lives aren't what we want them to be. And that's how I actually define stress. I define stress as, let's see if my hands are in here. Say this is a challenge I'm facing. This is something I don't want to have happen. For example, my husband dying by suicide. And this is just the reality of life. So it's the space in between my two hands where all stress exists. So using a little bit easier example, I want to make something for dinner, and I get out all the ingredients and realize one of the ingredients is missing. So now I'm stressed because I can't make the dinner that I want to make. Well, to bring these two things together, I either go to the store or make something different. But then that stress is gone. The way that we deal with stress is a really important aspect for decision making and living a healthy life, because you're always going to have challenges, from a missing ingredient in your recipe to grief and loss. I want to give you just a little history. I'm sure most of you watching this are familiar with the stress response, but I like to give a little background. Let's see. If you guys want to, if you are watching live and you want to put in the chat, anytime recently, and you can just say yes or no, you don't have to tell me what happened. Have you experienced making a decision that you regretted? And if so, now you can think about it mindfully. Can you think of a different way you could have approached your choice? And using mindfulness to improve decision making is what I want to focus on today. When we are under stress, we make bad decisions. And why is that? Well, it's because our brains evolved in such a way that the earliest evolution of our human brain was to keep us alive. And that's where we go when we're challenged, the fight and flight response. And it did keep us alive. Human beings are still existing on the planet because of the fight and flight response. The problem is, in our modern day society and our modern lives, we normally are not at risk for dying. If, say you're in a traffic jam and your body reacts as if, how we did in our evolution, as if you're being attacked by a predator. And the things that happen to your body are your breath gets quicker, your heartbeat speeds up, blood pressure increases, your blood clots faster. Because think about it, back then, if you got attacked by a bear and you were bleeding, if you clotted faster, you'd have a higher chance of survival. Your immune system goes offline, and that's because we don't need to be fighting a cold when we're fighting a bear. Your digestion shuts down, and of course that's whether you just had lunch or not doesn't matter. You're using your quick energy to run from the bear or fight with the bear. Your senses heighten, and your logic and reasoning part of your brain, that's the prefrontal cortex, gets shunted. So you're not thinking logically or reasonably, because what you're trying to do is just get the heck out of there and not become lunch. And that's, you just need your physical body as more for that. So the reactive brain takes over. We lose our connection with our responsive brain, the one that helps us with logic and reason. So I'd love to know if you can enter into the chat here a way that you feel like stress affects you. Do you notice stress in your life or overwhelming challenges? And how do you feel, either in mind or body, when you feel stress? If you want to share that, that would be great. Now moving on to, you should have followed your heart. Thanks, Christy. Thanks for your response. And thanks for being here. Thanks for allowing me to be here. There are a lot of different ways to manage stress. Some help with decision making, some not as much. But stress management is really, really important, and I highly advise all of you get stuck trying to figure it all out. Yes, yeah, overwhelm. So there's actually more aspects to the stress response than fight and flight. There's freeze and submit, racing mind. Yeah. So fight and flight, freeze and submit. So freeze might be the racing mind, like you freeze because you're just stuck in indecision. And then submit is more like the overwhelm. Some people call it fawn because it has an F, right? That makes it cute. Fight, flight, fawn. Freeze, fawn. But all of those reactions are from the lower part of the brain, the less evolved part of the brain. And it's very understandable, and we don't want to say anything negative about that part of the brain because, like I mentioned before, it's kept us alive all this time. So what we want to do is be able to recognize when we are in our reactive state and pause, and then bring the more responsive part of the brain online. But I'll get to that in a minute. First, I want to talk just a little bit about general stress management. My favorite stress management tools are meditation and mindfulness, exercise. Sometimes I just have to go take a vigorous walk when I'm feeling overwhelmed or my mind's racing. Restful sleep, and nourishing the body and mind. So nourishing the body, nutrition, right? We're drinking enough water, we're eating healthy foods. But what about nourishing the mind? Think about that for a moment. Sometimes we're filling our mind with garbage. We're just watching horror movies or TikTok videos or whatever else you're doing that. And I'm not saying that's bad to do for short periods of time, but it's not necessarily nourishing, like maybe reading spiritual literature or listening to guided meditations, or some of these lives that have been going on during our summit, very nourishing to the mind and body. Spending time in nature and being around people who nourish you. Relationships can be incredibly stressful, but they can also be incredibly nourishing. So being aware of the people you're around, are they people that are supporting your health and well-being? Other ways that I help manage stress are I use gratitude and compassion. And gratitude I consider your emotional safety net. If you're ever feeling uncomfortable in any way, finding a way to go into gratitude, spending some time in gratitude can undermine your discomfort and maybe even evaporate your discomfort. I'd love for those of you who are here live to add in the chat any ways that you support stress management, any practices that you do, just to add to our list. It's an ongoing list. Another way that I often find relief from stress is an act of service. I can be uncomfortable, the mind racing thing, like Bronwyn mentioned, I get into that a lot. And sometimes I'll interrupt that for a moment and I'll say to myself, who can you help right now? And I'll reach out to someone. I mentor for a group called TAPS, which is Tragedy Assistance Programs for Survivors, military survivors. My husband was military. And I now mentor suicide widows. So I'm feeling uncomfortable, I may reach out to one of them and see, what do you need? Or I have, any of my friends that I know are going through a tough time. How are you today? How are you feeling today? To get myself out of my head and also doing an act of service and hopefully helping someone else, noticing I'm stressed and choosing to stop and do something else. Yeah. Just redirect, right? Okay, here's my stress. I'm going to go over here and do this for a while. Good. Of all of those different ways to manage stress, I'm going to focus on two particularly right now because they go with decision making, and those are meditation and mindfulness. Oh, Bronwyn, yeah, light a scented candle. I love lighting candles. Candles can be so soothing. Yeah, that's a great one. Another one that I'll throw in there, Ayurveda, which is I'm a certified Ayurveda lifestyle coach, and Ayurvedic lifestyle, one of the things that is recommended is a daily oil massage. Now, a lot of times we're not going to take time out of our day to do the head to toe oil massage, and a lot of people are rejecting putting oil on their scalp because your hair gets oily. But if you just do it on your feet, it can be amazing. I have a friend who oils her feet every night before bed, no matter how late it is, no matter how tired she is, and those nights she sleeps really well. If she skips that routine, she doesn't sleep as well. It's very, very effective. And I'm not sure what the season is in Australia. You guys might be going into spring. We're going into winter here. We're in fall here in the United States. And so we're using more warming oils. I use a sesame oil. You can use almond oil. And any scent that feels good to you. If you like lavender, that's known for being calm, chamomile. There's so many different things you can do with oil, but that's one thing that you can do is putting oil on the feet before bed. It's so nourishing for your body and mind. Or light the candle. When we talk about meditation and mindfulness, some of the scientifically proven benefits, and if you're a meditator, then you probably also know this, are that a regular meditation practice can lower your blood pressure, improve immune response, improve digestion and sleep, hormone regulation. It can lessen cravings, so you're going to increase your self-control. And this is something that I used when I was getting myself off of the substance self-soothing behaviors, was some mindfulness techniques and a daily meditation practice. And I do credit those things for helping me become independent of substances. I've actually been alcohol-free for over 3 years now, and alcohol was a big part of my life for most of my life. So I'm pretty proud of that, and I credit an excellent therapist and meditation and mindfulness practices. It also can improve relationships. Those practices can improve your relationships because, like all, yeah, Christy, do it. Like I'll go into in a minute, it helps you stay in touch with the response, the higher part of your brain, rather than the react, the less evolved part of your brain. You can make better decisions. So now that you know that, how do you connect the two? And this is the juice of my talk tonight. So if you don't listen to anything else, listen to these next few minutes. I call it STORY, and I use STORY as an acronym because, first of all, it helps me remember, and second of all, I love that acronym because you want the story of your life to be fulfilling and rich and full of love and joy. And yes, there's going to be pain, and yes, there's going to be challenges. But when you have meditation and the mindfulness practice of STORY in your back pocket, you can make better decisions and choose your best life. The mindfulness practice of STORY. When you're faced with a challenge, and you may notice, like my responses earlier, you may notice your mind is racing, you may notice you want to just get away from the challenge, you may feel overwhelmed. That's when you want to stop. So the S in STORY is stop. Just stop. Take a few deep breaths. That's the T. And make it 3 deep breaths. Really count them. 3 times. You can try it right now. I'll wait. I'll do it with you. I had to do this while Christy was holding my hand to try to figure out how to get on this live tonight. And then after you've taken your 3 deep breaths, thanks, Christy, you observe, okay, mind, body, what am I feeling? I'm feeling my chest feels tight, or my tummy feels upset. I'm shaky, I'm starting to sweat, whatever physical sensations you're experiencing that go along with the challenge. And then also observe, what is the situation? What's happening? What challenge am I facing that's causing me to feel stressed? And that observation can almost always allow you to separate your feelings from the situation and come into your responsive part of your brain, calm you down, and bring that response, the higher thinking brain, online, so that you can here comes the respond rather than react. And because I like to always have a celebration, the why is, yay, I did it. Now the why can also be, yeah, I'll try harder next time. Because we don't always get it right. It's a practice. But just like anything, it's a training. Just like if you were going to run a 10K, you wouldn't just go run a 10K, right? You would practice. You would work up to it. You'd start by running, well, for me, it would be 2 blocks, and then 3 blocks, and then 1K, 2K, all the way up until the 10K challenge. You can really do it. You can really feel good about it. So just to recap, writing your own story. Stop, take 3 deep breaths, and if that doesn't work, take 3 more. Observe the situation, respond from your higher thinking brain, and yay, celebrate. Or yes, I'm gonna try it, make it better next time. Yes, I accept that I'm not perfect. Yeah, Bronwyn, absolutely. Use it with children. I think some of the people we interact with every day that might be older than children still maybe aren't emotionally intelligent and therefore could use this practice. Now, finding guidance for your best decisions is a separate piece, but also part of it. So when you are in the O before you get to the R, when you're in your observe, sometimes just observing without reacting isn't enough to answer the question, what is my best choice here? What should I do? Yay, thanks, Christy. Christy put the whole story in the chat. So it might be good also to practice, and some of you who are watching this and watching this on the replay, I'm sure have practices in mind, but you might not, if you're feeling pressured to make a decision, you might not think to bring those in. But we always have the ability to to connect to a higher guidance, and that may be yourself, that may be your inner voice, which you can access better by taking those 3 breaths, calming the mind. You can hear your inner voice. Meditation practice also helps with that. But what do you want guiding your responses? Anger? Fear? No. Probably what you want guiding your responses is something like compassion. And how about start with self-compassion? How could you be kind to yourself in this moment? Gratitude, I mentioned earlier, that is one of the best ways to get a good response going, a healthy response that you won't regret later. And what I mean by that is, when you face this challenge that you're trying to make a decision about, in every moment, there is something to be grateful for. I'm grateful for Christy helping me get on this live today. And I'm grateful that I have power right now. A lot of people in my area lost power because we had a big storm come through the last couple days. That would have made it impossible for me to be with you tonight. So it can be little things. It doesn't have to be, I'm grateful for my house, my family. It can be, I'm grateful for the fact that the power didn't go out tonight, which I guess is a big thing. You can be grateful for the air coming into your lungs. As simple as that. Every breath, you can have gratitude for that. So when you find gratitude, when you're in gratitude, you won't be in panic. You won't be in anger. When you're in appreciation, you're not in distress. That is a really great way to connect with your reason and your response part of your brain. Another one is forgiveness. Is there a way that forgiveness can come in? And I love to use the example of one of the challenges that we face sometimes daily is a traffic altercation, right? You're in the wrong place at the wrong time, or you're spaced out and you don't go when the light turns green and somebody honks at you, or somebody cuts you off. Somebody cuts you off and gives you a finger, honks, whatever might happen. Traffic can be such a place for practicing mindfulness. So when you're there and this person just honked at you or cut you off, you could react with anger, chase them down, honk at them, give them a finger back. Or you could react with compassion. Like I mentioned earlier, compassion in this case can be used as, what do you think that person went through to become so reactive today? Are they on their way home to a sick loved one? Did they get in a fight with their boss at work? I like to live under the assumption that we're all doing our best at any given time, which is why it's even more important to be able to practice meditation and mindfulness. It helps me be my best. Maybe that person didn't meditate this morning. They're really frustrated. So it could be a lot of things that led up to that moment, and you were the recipient of that. And I'm sorry, but if you greet it with compassion rather than react with anger and then shake it off, let it go. And there's lots and lots of really amazing ways to do that, which I can get to if I don't run out of time. Remind me. If you greet that person with compassion, or you can even bring gratitude in. I'm grateful that I didn't in my car and I didn't get in a car accident. I'm grateful that person didn't hit me. Something like that. And that's where forgiveness comes in. Because as soon as you can forgive that person, they're gone. You've released them. You're no longer carrying them around. If you hold on to anger and frustration at how you were treated, you bring that home, you spread that anger and frustration to the people that you live with, and then everybody's angry because you had a traffic altercation. Whereas if you could have shaken it off, greeted that person with compassion and forgiveness, you could come home and just have a lovely evening with the people that you live with until they irritate you. And then you start all over again. Another thing that might help, and you may or may not relate to this, is Lord, help me. A lot of us have a name for our higher guidance, God, Goddess, Lord, whatever that might be to you. What would your archetype do? You may have a historical or a religious archetype that you really connect to. There were bracelets, I remember a couple decades ago, that were really popular that said, what would Jesus do? Well, if that keeps you in response rather than react, if you have that bracelet on your wrist and someone comes up and gets in your face, chances are you're probably not going to get violent. You're going to, Jesus would respond with compassion, love. Yeah. So some of my archetypes I just would like to share are Jane Goodall and Greta Thunberg. Those are two environmental activists, and if you're not familiar with them, I highly recommend looking them up. Jane Goodall's closing in on 90, and I did get to see her live one time. She was known for saving the gorillas in Africa, and that was decades ago, and she's just been one of the foremost environmental respecters in the world. Another person whose teachings I like to follow is Buddha. Buddha has a lot of good stuff to say. So think of some of your archetypes and have them in the forefront of your mind. This is why reading spiritual literature on a regular basis can really help, because if you're reading that type of thing, I also like to read Eckhart Tolle, Gary Zukav, Tara Brach, Deepak Chopra. Reading literature by those people helps me stay in my response brain. It helps me make decisions and responses based on higher thinking, based on the kind of person I want to be. And we have choices. We have a time. Jane, yes, I love her. We have time when we practice meditation and mindfulness to bring all of those things in and live our best life by making better decisions. So before we go, I would love to offer just a couple quick practices. And if you're not a meditator and you're not familiar with mindfulness practices, I cannot recommend highly enough that you find a way to get that into your life. If you have no time, one of my clients I worked with for a while, her mindfulness and meditation practice was she got in her car every morning and she took 3 deep breaths before she got on the road for her commute to work. Even that can help. Meditation and mindfulness practices are scientifically proven to change your brain, so you will be more responsive and less reactive. It's magic. It really is. It's like the best drug ever and no bad side effects. A mindfulness practice. I invite you to close your eyes, take a deep breath, and listen. Simply listen. You can hear my voice, but what else can you hear? Maybe you can hear traffic driving by or a breeze. Maybe you can hear the hum of an electronic, or perhaps you have someone in the next room whose voice you can hear, or a TV on. Just take a minute now, we'll be really quick, and notice what you can hear. Maybe 2 or 3 things. And feel free to put them in the chat if you noticed anything. That's a mindfulness practice. It's as simple as that. The one that I teach is the 5 senses. So you start with 5 things you can hear, see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can smell. I know it's kind of hard. 2 things you can feel, and then 1 thing you can taste. There's almost always a taste in your mouth, even if you haven't eaten recently. Very easy mindfulness practice, and if you go through that, when you come out the other side, you're gonna feel better. You're gonna feel more grounded. Window pane rattling. And I bet, Bronwyn, I bet you didn't notice that at all until that practice, right? Yeah. Now a meditation practice. Again, close your eyes. Birds, yeah? That's right, it's daytime there. My birds are all asleep here. It's 10 to 7 o'clock at night here. Go ahead and close your eyes again. Sit up nice and tall and bring your hands to your belly. Breathe deeply into your belly so that your hands actually move in and out with your inhale and exhale. Focus on your breath, the movement of your chest. Breathing in and out through the nose. Notice the air is a little bit cooler on the way in than on the way out. can release that. Go ahead and open your eyes if they were closed. That's a meditation. So it's that simple. It's just a matter of sitting and doing it. And you can do it, well, you can't sit with your eyes closed while you're driving, but you can focus on your breath anytime. In the middle of a talk, before a talk, when you're fighting with Facebook Live technology. A breath, I'm recentered and I'm ready to go. Yeah, I'm just looking in the chat here. It's amazing how helpful mindfulness practices can be. And I consider gratitude a mindfulness practice. I also consider it, I just wrote a blog a couple weeks ago on gratitude being your emotional parachute. It's always there for you, anytime you're feeling uncomfortable. So if you're here live, I would love to answer any questions that you have. I also, earlier in the chat, I put my website, and I'd like to offer anybody who is at this talk today to hop on my website, set up a discovery call. That's free, and we can, it's set up for 20 minutes, but I'm happy to provide a full 30-minute call for anyone who wants to talk about any of these things, meditation and mindfulness, and how to bring them into your life. It's amazing how easy it is to do this once you've become aware of it. And it is literally life-changing. It's brain-changing. Science has shown us that. So how would you like the opportunity to make the best decisions, to be guided by a higher source, internal or external, and be able to choose your story, choose your life? So I don't see anyone putting anything in the chat, so I am going to sign off. Once again, thanks to Taryn Reeves for creating the Phoenix Rising community, the Phoenix Rising group, and our summit tonight. And thanks also to Christy Moran for getting me physically here on this live call. Thank you, Florine, and thanks to everyone out there for watching, whether you're watching live or replay. And I'm on Facebook. You can also send me a message on Facebook if you like. Choose your story. Thank you all so much for your time today. Best decisions, best life. Thank you. Take care.